Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 24th River Falls City Council meeting. First thing we're going to do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call, please.
Bierstead.
Here.
Downing.
Here.
Gagne.
Here.
Morset.
Here.
Odine.
Here.
Page.
Here.
Watson.
Here.
Approval of minutes from the April 10th regular and closed session meeting minutes.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have the approval of the bills with Mr. Watson.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of the bills in the amount of $1,026,101.67, subject to comptroller.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we move on to public comments. If there's anybody in the audience has anything they'd like to talk about, now would be the time. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Diane.
I would just like to make a public comment on behalf of myself personally, and I'm sure I speak for the whole council in extending our sympathies to the city of Hudson, who lost one of their city council members this past week, John Hogat, who was on the council for a number of years on a lot of committees and really loved that town. So anyway, we send our condolences to Sarah Atkins' widow and to the council in the city.
Thanks, Diane. Okay, next we move on to consent agenda. First thing is acknowledgement of the following minutes. The EMS Advisory Board from February 5th. The Park and Recreation Advisory Board from March 21st. The Historic Preservation Commission from April 11th. The Plan Commission from 4/3. The Police and Fire Commission from August 21st. Utility Advisory Board from March 19th. Next thing is resolution regarding official newspaper. This will be a resolution to designate the River Falls Journal as the official city newspaper. Next one is a resolution approving memorandum of understanding with the municipal court. This would be between the River Falls Municipal Court and the City of River Falls for an MOI, or MOU, I'm sorry. Next one is a resolution regarding the SAFER grant. This resolution would authorize the submission of the SAFER grant. The grant will be used to help fund one daytime fire officer. Last one is a resolution regarding the Second Amendment to tower rental lease with AT&T. This resolution would approve an amendment to the cell tower lease for New Singular Wireless, which used to be AT&T. The amendment maintains the current term of the lease through 2036, but changes the rent structure starting in 2021. Does anybody want to pull anything?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull consent agenda item number 5.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll take a motion on the rest.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve consent agenda 2A through F, 3, 4, and 6.
Second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. Downing, you pulled number 5.
Resolution approving the application for U.S. Department of Homeland Security 2017 staffing for adequate fire emergency response SAFER grant. I think the strength of this resolution, it allows for succession planning. The fire department will need this flexibility so they can plan accordingly. And that's why I think this is a really important resolution. So with that, I move approval for consent agenda item number 5. Second.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
just to make it very clear, the resolution indicates, and the table in the memo on page 37 also indicates, but there is one place in the narrative that contradicts that. It says the grant will provide funding of $298,560. The grant is for $184,000. The grant request is for $184,112. The total cost of the staffing commitment is $298,560. So the resolution reflects that correctly, and the table does, but appreciate the council reading their packet and letting me know that we had that problem.
And that's a 3-year grant.
Correct.
So, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next move on to ordinance resolutions. First one is a resolution approving the final plat for the Villas of Sterling Ponds. This is Phase 3. And I'll entertain a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion, we approve resolution for the final plat for Villas of Sterling Ponds Phase 3.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I have a quick comment. We have Al Rolick for the city treasurer signature on the certificate form. We need to update that. That's my only comment I got.
Anybody else?
I have a question for Mr. Wronski, if he's here tonight.
Read.
In the documents that were submitted, there was a notation that a portion of this final plat area is covered by the waterway protection area. I'm not using the right term there. The buffer for the Kinney, I'm assuming, or a wetland area, wetland protection area. And Amy, excuse me, you can comment on that. I didn't see it on the actual map, or I couldn't find it on the map, and I was wondering what am I missing here, if anything?
So there is a waterway that goes through that area that is affected by our shoreland ordinance.
The shoreline ordinance, yep.
And so we did, I believe, request in the final plat that that line be delineated and that staff get a closer look at those lots as they develop to ensure that they conform to the ordinance.
Okay.
And-
So that buildings are outside of the shoreland zone, essentially, correct? All right. That's my question. I wanted to just make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Oh, you got it there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Number 8 is a resolution approving contract with TRC Consulting to help us with the FERC hydroelectric relicensing application. I'll entertain a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion, we approve the resolution approving the contract with TRC Consulting for the FERC hydro relicensing.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, next move on to reports. Our first report is the housing assessment. And our development director, Amy, is going to give us a presentation.
Actually, I'll set up the presentation.
Oh,
How's
okay.
that?
Amy's going to set up the presentation.
Mayor and Council, thank you. The housing report was released on the 13th of this month, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that. It was funded by the city and by the River Falls Housing Authority. And we have Joe Holman here from Maxfield Research to give just a quick summary presentation to you on the findings. Oh, did it not go? Good, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Joe Holman with Maxfield Research. Maxfield has been around doing housing studies and commercial real estate market assessments for over 30 years. I've been with the company for about 7 years now. Prior to that, I got my start in city planning and also spent some time in the commercial real estate industry. Just briefly, the content of the housing needs assessment. All of our market studies start with an analysis of demographic and economic trends. From there, we delve into existing housing stock conditions and characteristics, and then move into the various housing or residential real estate product types: for sale housing, rental housing, senior housing. We have a section on special needs housing in the community, and we conclude with demand calculations along with recommendations and kind of a SWOT analysis for the city. Anytime we prepare a study, we start with the definition of a primary market area from which most of the housing demand will be drawn. In the case of River Falls, in a comprehensive housing study, that study or the primary market area or PMA is going to be fairly broad because we're covering a whole range of housing product types: senior, rental, for sale. Some of the factors that we look at when determining the market area include commuting patterns, school district boundaries, just geographic boundaries, community orientation, things of that nature. So for River Falls, we determined that the primary market for housing demand would come from River Falls, Prescott, Ellsworth, and then the adjacent and surrounding townships. When we do our demand calcs, we take into account that a portion of that demand will come from outside this market area, so we include that overage in our demand calculations. And in this case, we calculate demand for the entire market area, and then estimate a capture rate, how much that demand will actually occur or be realized in the city of River Falls. And in our estimation, that ranges from 55 to 65%, depending on product type. Some of the key demographic and economic drivers impacting housing demand in River Falls. River Falls has experienced solid population and household growth, and we expect that to continue out through 2030. Not as strong as the city experienced in the first half of the 2000s. As we all went through the recession, the growth is starting to resume, and we expect that to continue. And I'll get into this, in the upcoming slides, but what we found is the housing supply in River Falls is very tight, whether it's rental housing or for sale housing. So in order for the city to accommodate new population and household growth, new housing units will be needed in the city as I mentioned, to accommodate the forecasted growth. River Falls is blessed with a wide variety of age cohorts that'll drive a variety of different housing product types. The strong concentration of the younger and college student population, really driving demand for rental housing. You're going to have strong growth in the older cohorts, which will drive more senior housing demand. And then as these age groups move through the life cycle, the younger folks that are renting now will move into entry-level housing, then into move-up housing. So having that variety will help stimulate housing demand, for the long term. Household incomes influencing affordability. I will touch on that in more detail a couple slides down from here, but we expect that incomes in River Falls will continue. They have been growing. We expect them to continue growing, with the greatest growth growing in the upper income brackets over the next 5 to 10 years. One of the trends that we've noticed since 2010 to now, there's been a major shift in household types and household tenure in River Falls, and not just River Falls, throughout the metro area, in that households are tending to choose rental housing over owner housing. And that's by choice, and they're also staying in rental housing longer than they had in previous decades. So between 2010 and 2016, we found that there's been strong rental housing growth in the city, but the owner household growth has been fairly flat. And in these household types, I talked about the age distribution. And the younger folks, form roommate households, and they rent their housing. So we expect the household type trends to continue shifting as the age groups move through the life cycle. And I mentioned the college student age population. There's been fairly flat enrollment growth at UW River Falls. If that turns and if they start adding more and more undergraduate students in particular, that will create more demand for rental housing in the city.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So are you saying that if there's going to be an increasing demand, or there is an increasing demand, that demand is primarily in the rental market and not in the owner-occupied market?
No, that shift has occurred, and it's still occurring, but we expect that it to turn back into demand for owner housing going forward. There will continue to be demand for rental housing, but as these younger age groups, there's a population cohort called the echo boom, and that's called 35-year-olds. They're staying in rental housing longer due to a variety of reasons: choice, financial constraints, student loans. There's a lot of reasons for that, but they will eventually start to buy. And in our interviews with real estate agents, that trend was kind of echoed and stated that they expect that population to start buying,
Okay.
looking for entry-level homes.
Not to take you too far off
That's
line
okay.
here, but to follow up on Mr. Watson's comment, would the, you mentioned the economy, but would supply also be a factor there if they just
Yeah,
like
if
living
they're-
here, but they can't find something to buy?
Right, right, and that is an issue. People in rental housing that want to buy an entry-level home can't find the product easily right now. So that's another reason why they're staying in rental housing longer. So that's the kind of hits the supply.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. On the employment side, the employment data is county-wide, but in the market area, since the recession, resident employment growth has really been outpacing labor force growth, causing unemployment rate to go down. We expect, job growth to continue, out through the next 5, 10, 15 years. One caveat to that is regionally, there's a concern that the labor supply is going to be shrinking before too long with increased retirements. So as a city, the more you can do to bring labor force here by providing housing options for a variety of, whether it's low-income earners, executives, providing a variety of housing product types to keep workers here and to bring workers here, it'll set you in a better position for further economic development going forward, if that makes sense, because employers are going to look for where the labor is. So if you can provide housing, bring labor here, that'll also attract employers. Right now, River Falls is a slight exporter of workers, meaning more people leave the city on a daily basis for employment than people coming in. But still, there's over 3,500 workers coming into River Falls daily for employment. And a portion of those workers would likely or potentially seek housing in the city if it were available. Particularly those that are, there's over 500 workers that commute from more than 50 miles away every day, many of which are maybe low-income earners that either can't find affordable housing in the city and would want to. So that worker inflow creates an opportunity for housing.
Mr. Holman,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting again, but could you talk a little bit more about how you arrived at that number? What did you, is this
So,
a
yeah, the-
formula, or is this?
No, that's
Some
it's
gathering of
it's
data
data
from
from
somebody?
it's census data from it's a local employment household dynamics program through the Census Bureau. So they chart or log workers that either they work in the city or they live in the city and they work out. People that live in the city work in the city, and vice versa. So it's government data that we draw that from. Now, this data is somewhat dated. The most recent is 2015, but that's just the most recent that's out there. So this isn't something that we created. It's just a data set that's available.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay. Just a quick snapshot of the existing housing stock in River Falls. We tracked building permits back 2000 through the most recent available when we finished the report, which was towards the end of 2017. We find that the housing production in River Falls is fairly steady. Prior to the recession, you can see in the graph the taller green bars. River Falls produced about 144 new housing units a year. There was a dip during the recession, and now it's slowly starting to climb back up. Since 2013, it's averaged 75 new housing units a year. So not back to the pre-recession levels, but it's climbing. The next point, I found it interesting that detached single-family homes represent about 45% of all housing units in River Falls, which is actually a fairly small proportion relative to the surrounding area and the metro area, which has over 60%. It's just detached single-family. So what that tells me is that there's a wider variety of housing product types in River Falls than what potential buyers or renters can find in the surrounding area. For home values, this data is based on American Community Survey data, so census data. Median home value in River Falls of just under $175,000 is about 21% lower than the metro median, and about 30% lower than the remainder of the primary market area. But going along with that, rental housing is a little bit more expensive than the surrounding area, which creates some affordability issues, which I'll touch on that in a couple slides. And the housing occupancy rates in the city of 95% are higher than the surrounding area, but comparable to the metro area. And what we found doing our rental housing survey is that actual rental housing occupancy is much higher than this 95%. The for sale housing market, which single-family homes, townhomes, things of that nature, pricing is on the rise, and it has surpassed the pre-recession highs. The median sale price right now for a single-family home in the city is $245,000, just slightly below the metro average. And then, we say multifamily, but that'd be townhome, twin home, attached single-family. The median is $154,000. Still below the metro average of $180,000. Sales activity's up, marketing times are down. The numbers are right there. So what these points tell me is that River Falls has a fairly strong or healthy for sale housing market right now, with a slight concern that it may be undersupplied. Based on average home sales and the supply of homes currently available in the market, there's about a 3-month supply of single-family homes and a 0.7-month supply of multifamily homes. Now, a healthy market or equilibrium in for sale is a 6-month supply of homes on the market. So the for sale housing market right now is undersupplied. And with new development, there's about a 2-year supply of residential lots in the city. Equilibrium is a 3 to 5 year supply of lots. So we recommend that the city, actively pursue, additional subdivision activity to get that back up to the 3 to 5 year supply. The rental market, I talked about this a couple slides ago, so we surveyed a lot of rental properties in the city. The market rate vacancy rate is 1.2%. And the affordable subsidized projects in the city are 0.8% vacant, really just a couple vacancies at the time of our survey. 5% vacancy is considered the healthy mark or equilibrium in the rental housing market. So your rental housing supply is very tight right now. And it's one of the comments that I heard talking to employers is that, for any of their, younger employees that may want to move here, really have a difficult time finding suitable housing. Rental rates are on the rise. The average market rate rent for an apartment unit is $849 a month, which equates to $1.03 per square foot. And I put that in there because I don't know if that seems high or low to you, but a new construction apartment building would probably have rents averaging about $1.30 a square foot, $1.30 to $1.40. So rents in River Falls are somewhat high relative to the surrounding area, but you don't have a lot of real new rental housing product. So to get new housing or new rental housing in here, there's going to be a jump in what that price point is going to be. So when you have below equilibrium vacancy, rising rents, it just stimulates demand for new product. This is a busy graph, but what I'm trying to show is kind of the continuum of housing and services for the senior population. Starting with the upper left portion, it's seniors living independently in single-family homes and townhomes. Moving then into an age-restrictive active adult community, either rental or owner-occupied. Congregate housing it's independent living with services available, typically a la carte. Moving into assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing care. So what we found with the senior housing, One, there's the affordable rental units, senior rental units are fully occupied throughout the city. So there's definitely pent-up demand for more senior housing units in the city. For the market rate units, there's really not a lot of age-restricted market rate housing in the city, and the product that we surveyed, it's about half full right now. As you get into the service-enhanced housing, congregate and assisted living, equilibrium for service-enhanced housing is about 7% vacancy. So the assisted living and congregate units are slightly below equilibrium, while memory care and skilled nursing, the higher acuity housing, has fairly high vacancy rates. Just a quick slide on the special needs. I think the most important point here to me is the second one. These points are really based on our interviews with special needs providers in the surrounding area. And they cited several things that they need, but for a housing study, they need more affordable housing to serve low-income households that are trying to exit existing shelters. Right now, they may have to travel well into the cities or Eau Claire, really outside the market area to find affordable housing as they try and exit shelters. They said there's nothing available in River Falls, for those folks that are trying to get out of the shelters. For a summary of housing affordability in the city, there's a federal definition for a cost-burdened household, and that's for any household paying 30% or more of their gross income on housing. There are a lot of households that choose to pay more than that because that's a priority for them. They'd rather spend more on housing than cars or whatever. But that 30% is the definition for cost burden. 35% of the households in River Falls are currently cost burdened based on that definition, compared to 28% in the metro area. But I thought the subpoints here are interesting to me. In the owner-occupied market, 18% of River Falls owner-occupied households are cost burdened, so lower than what we're seeing in the metro area, which is 21%. But on the renter side, over half of the renter households in River Falls are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on rental housing costs, compared to 46% in the metro area, suggesting that there's some need for more affordable rental housing in the city. The Housing Authority currently serves, I think, 63 households through the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and there are over 360 households on the waiting list. Again, kind of illustrating how much demand there is for affordable housing in the city. The graph below is probably hard to read. This is shown in more detail in the market study, but what we're trying to show is housing affordability based on household income in the city. So if somebody wanted to buy a move-up home priced at $300,000, they'd need a minimum income of just over $77,000 to not be cost burdened. And currently there are just under 60% of the owner households in the city could afford a move-up home. So I don't need to go through this in detail, but the point that jumped out to me was for a new one-bedroom apartment that we estimate would come in at about $900 a month. A renter household would need an income of about $36,000 to be able to afford that, and just about 42% of the renter households could afford that in the city. So a fairly small proportion of the renter households can afford new construction. Moving into our demand analysis. When we calculate demand, we take into account household growth, turnover of existing households, propensity to rent or own, and then just current market trends. And we projected our general occupancy or non-senior housing demand out through 2030, and we find that there will be demand for just over 1,500 new housing units in the city, but by 2030, most of which would be single-family homes. There are single-family for-sale units at just over 540 units. We also think there will be strong demand and growing demand for-sale multifamily, so townhomes and twin homes. We find strong demand for new market rate rental units, and it's the same for affordable rental units. We split affordable between shallow subsidy, which is basically catering to households at 40 to 60% of area median income, and deep subsidy is 30% or below. People aren't really building deep subsidy rental housing anymore. There's just really not funding available through HUD, but there is certainly demand. We find demand for about 200 units. A portion of that can be taken care of with the Section 8 vouchers, but we also know there's a pretty deep waiting list there. On the senior side, we find demand for call it 570 senior housing units by 2022. 179 market rate active adult units. So active adult is no services, just an age restricted community. Over 200 subsidized senior units. As I mentioned, the existing affordable senior units are fully occupied in the city, and we think there's immediate demand for more affordable senior units in the city. And then 88 congregate, 68 assisted living, and then 19 memory care units in 2022. We find essentially no demand for new skilled nursing beds right now. And that's a trend that's happening everywhere. That's caused by several things, but there are new service levels available now that weren't available back in the 70s and 80s. So residents don't need to move from their single-family home into a skilled nursing facility. They can go through the continuum of housing and gain services and care as needed, rather than it's jumping right into an institution. And finally, just our final assessment or conclusions. On the for sale single-family side, we think that most of the new development should be priced in the move-up category of $200,000 to $400,000. While there's really strong demand for entry-level housing and first-time home buyers, it's hard for a builder to develop new single-family homes that can sell it for that price point of below $200,000. But by building more move-up housing, people will move out of their entry-level homes into a move-up, and then creating turnover of those lower-priced entry-level homes. We also find that there's going to be growing demand for townhomes, twin homes in the market, particularly for the older households as they want to move out of a single-family home, but not yet ready to move into service-enhanced housing. And that can also be a target for an entry-level buyer, depending on price point. But again, moving seniors out of a single-family home into new construction townhomes can also create turnover and serve as a market for younger buyers. On the rental side, we think there's a demand in the market for a new upper to middle market rental project. I mentioned the $900 a month for one bedroom, but we would expect this project not to target students, but to target young households that are out of college and are started in their careers. It might be a married couple, it might be a single person. And what we're finding is that the empty nesters are also really being drawn to highly amenitized apartment living. That's really what's driving a lot of the apartment boom in the 7-county core of the metro area. But in order to really kind of achieve this upper market or middle market, you need to be able to provide amenities that aren't currently available. Things like stainless appliances, granite countertops, underground heated parking, outdoor recreation, things like that. And based on our survey, that those amenities just really aren't available right now. And in the senior side, we think there's an immediate need for active adult affordable rental. And we also think there's room in the market for a catered living project, which is a kind of a hybrid of independent living and assisted living, where a resident can start, move in independently and then gain services as needed. Based on the current vacancy of memory care, we don't think there's an immediate need for new memory care units in the city. But in 5-10 years, that need will grow. So the senior housing demand will be sustained over the next 10 plus years. So that concludes my presentation. I'll open up to whatever questions you might have.
Yep, go ahead.
We're have been pretty successful in the last few years attracting businesses, large businesses to town here. But it sounds to me like we're having a hard time keeping those people here to earn enough money to build or to buy or rent the new housing we seem to need here too. So how important is it for us to talk to businesses that have a wage scale that matches up with the housing needs in River Falls?
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern. So the businesses that I talked to, one of the questions I asked is the availability or lack of housing impacting your ability to recruit employees? And really, they all had the same answer with, it's kind of not really, because the commute shed for River Falls is really large. I mean, you pull from the East Metro, from Eau Claire, people, we saw in the commuting patterns that people are coming from a long ways out. But what I heard is that there are employees that want to live here. If they're starting a family, they want to be in this school district, but they can't find the affordable entry-level home. And when those homes open up, they move quickly. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, if you're a young couple or a young professional, if you want to rent something newer, nicer. You don't want to live the college lifestyle anymore. And you probably don't want to be in the same building as a lot of college students. But that's not a product that's readily available in the city. The new rental product. So it is hard for a lot of the employees that want to live here to find the housing.
Okay.
You recognize it in some of the information as I read through this, and I can't put my fingers on it right now, but I do wonder a little bit about how much of the income, broken down by under 25 is skewed by college students. You do recognize it in here, but I think that plays a much larger part in that affordability metrics that you were using before about when you're putting the 30%.
It does, but it's not all college students. I mean, I'm not going to remember. One of the employers I talked to, they're hiring, they're expanding. There's a lot of low wage earners, and they're coming from St. Paul. They have nowhere to live closer. Now some of them are choosing to live in St. Paul due to lifestyle choices, but the housing options just aren't there for the lower wage earners. But you're right. There's a big chunk of the younger cohort that have the lower incomes, and a lot of those are college students.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't take away from the need by any means, but I want to make sure as people use this document that they don't look at it and go, oh, geez, there is a little bit of a skew there
Right.
with the college factor.
Is it safe to assume that those that are commuting elsewhere are earning more money than they would here?
You mean for employment?
Right.
That would be an assumption. I don't, I didn't get into why people are leaving the city for employment.
Okay.
There is some information in the study, kind of a brief breakdown on income, and some
Yep.
income ranges,
Yep.
so you can kind of look at it,
Yep.
see what they're making, the people that are moving out. But
I got a quick question about, and I don't know if part of what you guys do, if you guys spend time with staff, talking to them about how we talk to developers, how we've always talked to developers, hey, we have a need for this, or we have a need for that. I don't know if that's part of what you guys do, but are we missing something? Is there something different that you can see that we should be doing?
no, if I could summarize your housing market in just a quick phrase, I would say it's really healthy,
Yeah,
if a little bit undersupplied.
right.
You have demand for really the full spectrum of housing product types. The executive level homes are moving much slower than the move ups in the entry level, but that's typical.
Okay.
So I don't think you're missing anything, but I do think that, like I said, you are undersupplied, and I don't think you want to continue to trend that way.
Right.
Because it will kind of snuff out the growth potential if you don't have the housing available.
And you know, everybody knows development's starting to come back.
Yeah.
Developers are coming up, and now they're starting to look to buy land and build. So the way we're doing things, the way the staff has always worked with the developers, you think, and granted this, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but we seem to be on the right path anyways. Do you think,
Yeah, yes. So,
from what you've seen
yeah,
and
so
studied?
from the people I've talked to, you know, one of the questions I typically ask is, you know, what can the city do to help? Or can the city be doing something differently or do more? And everyone's, you know, it's over the phone, so it's hard to shrug your shoulders over the phone.
Right.
But that was kind of the feel I got from the response is like, you know, the city's fine.
Okay.
So,
Well, being in the industry, I think it's safe to say that bridging the cost gap is a huge problem.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what our costs have gone up over the last 3 years, but I bet it's 30 or 40%. So there's your affordability problem right there.
Right.
It just costs that much. We could do free building permits here, but it wouldn't bridge the gap, you know.
No.
If it's impossible to build a single-family house for less than 200,000,
That's the rub.
that's your reality
Yeah.
right there.
yeah, that's, I mean, where the turnover becomes important,
Right.
turnover of the lower priced homes.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Joe, can I ask a couple of questions? Or I heard one comment you made, maybe an opportunity to elaborate. So I heard you say it, and I'm not sure that I pulled it out of the report, so I'm glad you mentioned it. But I think what I heard you say is that one thing that would help the overall market, given the affordability gap in building a new house for that entry level, is finding products in that $200,000 to $400,000 range that will be attractive to people to move out of the houses that they're already
Correct.
in. And I saw in the report, you know, we have 20% of the housing in River Falls is built when mine was, you know, between 2000 and 2009.
Okay.
I have a 2001 home. And then 16% was built in the 70s. And so if you're assuming that many of those, that 36% homes are those affordable, you know, they would be available at 200 or 225, which I'm not sure they are, but maybe the 70s, some of the 70s are. Are you saying that getting some effort in that 200 to 400 actually helps with the entry level? Because we've heard a lot of emphasis on we've got to build entry level affordable housing. And I think what I heard you say is we've got to build more expensive housing so that people can move out of their entry-level affordable
Yeah.
housing and let somebody else into it
Yeah,
because
and
they
I
can
think-
afford it.
Yeah, and the solution, I think, is across the board. But by building more move-up housing in that 200 to 400,000 range, that will get people out of, you know, assuming that they're in the market now, they live in River Falls now. Typically, people don't make lateral moves from one house to one house. They move up until it's time to move down. So theoretically, they would move out of a lower priced, entry-level priced home. And that would open that up to a younger, potentially younger buyer, somebody that's in the market for an entry-level home.
So if we talk to builders about how what would they be interested or how could they do those kind of projects, that would help with that could be seen as helping with the
Yes.
entry-level housing
Yes.
issue. The second question is, put you on the spot a little bit, but I know Maxfield is hired by developers, so developers say, should we really build this? Should we really do that? And you do more specific analysis. But if a developer came to you and said, what is the one thing I should build in River Falls based on your results? What is there one or two products that you really think developers ought to? We should expect developers to be coming to us tomorrow after this report and wanting to build.
Yeah, to limit it to one or two, I would say building detached single-family homes is going to be a pretty safe investment in River Falls. People want to move here. The school district is great. There's a lot of amenities here. People want to raise their families here. I heard that from everyone I talked to. So that product, the move-up single-family home, It can draw people in from, from quite a range. People that are starting families, if they can afford, the $250,000, $300,000 home, that's going to be a product that, that will be in demand. I also think that River Falls needs a new market rate rental housing community. That can, be a bridge for people that want to move out of some of the older rental stock, but haven't found a home yet. That they can move into a newer, nicer apartment, for a year, for 2 years. And that can also be a market for the older household that doesn't, like the thought of moving into an age-restricted community, but they don't want to, maintain their single-family home anymore. As I mentioned, a highly amenitized apartment product is really drawing a lot of the baby boom population out of single-family homes.
And that's the product that's identified as like a 3-bedroom at $1,600 or $1,700, or is that a higher?
It could be. I don't. To get into the specifics of unit types, I would, it'd probably be weighted heavier towards 1 and 2 bedroom units and 3 bedroom units in terms of the total unit mix for a new product. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I think it does.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for us on the 5-bedroom unit issue we have in River Falls?
No. That's a college student product. It's rented by the bedroom typically, not the occupant, or not for the whole unit. Oftentimes they'll rent it on a per bedroom basis. And I guess I don't know what the problem is you're referring to, but.
Well, I didn't see in your report, I'm not being wholly sarcastic, but you're not recommending that we would have a big demand for more 5-bedroom units. I didn't see that in the report.
No, I didn't hear that from anyone, and I don't think I've ever. No, I did not put that in the report.
It's not a crossover product.
No, I have to. If I'm doing a study for a college housing or student housing developer, and they want to do something in River Falls, a 5-bedroom component is probably going to be a part of that. So we'd have to examine, how the 5-bedroom units are doing occupancy-wise, and what the demand is like. So, but that is really that's a student-oriented product.
So the answer is maybe we do have demand even for that.
There could be, certainly, yeah.
A wide demand for lots of products, including.
Yeah, I mean that's for new product, that's an affordable way for college-age students to live in a new building. They room up together, and new products is typically highly amenitized.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions?
I have one comment, and that's just to say that, it's our choice as to how fast we want to grow. It's our choice as to where we want to grow, as a community. Obviously, we all represent different aspects of this community. There's demand out there, and there are demand calculations, but we aren't. We don't want the tail wagging the dog, as far as that goes, in my mind. We want to be thoughtful about how, what the character of the city is going to be in the future, how we want that to play out. And so this is really good information, and I look forward to seeing where we can take it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank
Greatly
you.
appreciate it. Okay, next move on to administrator's report. If anybody has anything for Scott,
I got something.
for us?
I just want to commend the River Falls EMS and Police Department. I know they're recently going through some Narcan training, and with the opioid epidemic across the country and specifically this part of the nation, I know there was an article in our packet from Attorney General and Gordon. There were some bits and pieces from him. How many officers do you have that are actually personally trained in Narcan today?
The exact number I'm not sure of, but majority, I would say 75% are.
And you're growing as time goes on, you'll try to get
Everybody.
everybody.
Yes, and it
And-
should be done shortly.
So for the folks at home, can you kind of explain why that's important to the police department when they roll up on a person that might need that and what that might look like?
It's life-saving medicine. It reverses the effect of the opiates that they're under, and it doesn't harm the patient. So if the officers get there, it doesn't turn out to be an overdose because of heroin. It won't harm a patient, but it will revive them if it is. Most chances that it'll save their life. And even for officers, it's especially effective if they're under the influence. If they happen to touch narcotics off of somebody, and it gets into their system, either through their hands or skin somehow, it'll immediately reverse the effects of that too, to help the officers too.
I think it's a great step that River Falls EMS is taking with the PD as well, and I commend the officers for actually taking that step, and looking out for our folks. On that same kind of token, do we have an ongoing medicine collection at the police department?
We do,
Yeah.
and it's in our front lobby, and it's open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, and even on Friday, April 27th, there's a national push for that weekend for anyone with any unused prescription drugs to drop it off at certain locations, and we're hosting that event. And we'll have extra staff in on that Friday, April 27th from 9 to 5 to accept those narcotics too.
All right, thank you.
Chief, could I, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask about the collection of the drugs. Is it still take the pills out of the bottle and just in a plain Ziploc bag so that you don't have their personal information and things like that?
Yes, that's correct, but when you're transporting it, make sure that you have the pill box with it, and we'll have the clear baggies, and we do every day for those people, but that is a good point, so that way the information doesn't get into somebody else's hands.
Chief, you mentioned the training for the Narcan, and sometimes I think we're all a little maybe naive to some of the evil things or bad things that go on in our city. How many drug overdoses, and I'm putting you on the spot here without having the ability to come up with it, but how many have we had in the last, say, year where we've had a drug overdose that you've responded to, that they've had to, Narcan could have helped or saved or done that?
I would say in comparison to our calls, very few, which
Well, that's
I would say
good.
maybe 3 or 4 throughout the year. And I can't explain why, but other communities, especially north of us, can't say the same.
Yes.
And that it's much worse outside of River Falls, and for whatever reason, it's not affecting us, and even as most of the state's been affected by it.
Wasn't it like 800 or 900 overdoses in Wisconsin? Isn't that the number I saw?
I don't
In
have
a
that
year?
stat, but I would
I
say
read
even
that.
that seems a little low.
Is it? Thought I read that in Wisconsin. Maybe I'm wrong.
Changing the subject just a little bit, I've had some very casual observations from people, and I took some time on Saturday and drove through town for our infamous bar crawl. And it seemed to me, and it seemed from the comments that I've received, again, very few, but that this year's bar crawl was probably one of the tamest yet. Is that a fair statement from your standpoint?
Since I've been here, this is my 3rd bar crawl, and it did seem like it was tame in comparison even to those other 2. And I attribute that to the bartenders and the bar owners and the staff that they hire to watch and monitor the patrons, and also for our staff. We bring in reserve officers to help us out, especially on the foot patrol throughout the downtown. And I think through those efforts, it's made a real big difference.
I drove through town at about 4:45 on Saturday evening, and I did notice 2 or 3 bars, they had somebody right at the door. So they were doing a good job of enforcing from what I could see from my spot. So I'm glad to hear that. I know that's not our favorite event, but so be it.
Thank you.
So from my comment, it was 827 people died from opioid overdoses in 2016. And then that push by law enforcement and medical officials brought that number down, obviously, because it's 609 in 2017. So
Yeah, and those were deaths, right?
deaths,
Yeah.
yep, not just overdoses, them are the actual deaths from the overdose.
And also for the Narcan, I'd like to thank Sage and Corporation. They had bake sales and such to raise the money for the Narcan, and they're the ones that supplied it for our police department, so very happy for them. It was their idea.
Good. Okay, Scott, everybody got any questions for Scott, or?
I'm going to be on the board of the review this year, and I just wanted to, Scott, if you could let people who know who are at home maybe watching about open book real quick.
Sure. So
Thank you.
Open Book is Wisconsin residents' opportunity to have a informal opportunity to discuss their tax assessment with the assessor. So in Wisconsin, there's a formal process with the Board of Review and also Circuit Court where you can appeal essentially or have a quasi-judicial opportunity to question the value placed on your property. But we'd encourage anybody that would like to come to Open Book. It's April 26th from 10 to 4. We'd like appointments made so that we can make sure we have enough assessors to answer questions. And you can use the 800 number from Associated Appraisal. It's 800-721-4157 for an appointment. A lot of times that satisfies our residents. They get their questions answered, or they understand the value, or the assessor changes the value based on new information that's provided. And then obviously if that's not satisfactory, residents in Wisconsin have the opportunity to attend the Board of Review, which is a quasi-judicial act of the city. That's Thursday, May 31st from 9 a.m. to 11. In that case, you must make an appointment to appear before the board. That's required under the statute. So we'd be happy to work with you. In that case, you just call the city clerk to set that appointment. You do not need to attend the Open Book in order to go to Board of Review, but we would recommend strongly that if you're considering Board of Review that you attend Open Book. A couple other announcements just that are in my report. Judge June Cicero's retirement event will be 2 to 4 p.m. in the training room at City Hall on April 27th. We've mentioned the Open Book and the drug collection already. I do want to note to council that you've asked for accounts receivable report, and that is included within the administrator's report, and as is the this year's annual fire department report. We likely will do oral reports every other year or so, but we thought we'd include the written report in your packet. So be happy to take any other questions. Everyone in River Falls is in a good mood because of the weather, so things are looking up. It's a lot easier to be happy when the weather is so. You'll see lots of activity, city crews doing restoration work, contractors out, construction, so everybody be careful, because I know the contractors were itching to go, so they'll be everywhere soon.
And I know we're doing a lot of street sweeping right now, and same goes for them. I think just give them a little room when you go around them. So.
Okay. Move on to comptroller's report.
I have a short comptroller's report for March 2018. General fund revenues through the end of March were $3,581,207. Expenditures for the same period were $2,170,010, or 14% of budgeted, for net of revenues over expenditures of $1,411,197.
Thanks, Diane. Okay, I got a couple different proclamations here I'd like to read. The first one is for Arbor Day, which is always the last Friday in April. So, whereas trees are a vital resource in River Falls and the world, helping to conserve soil, energy, filter out air, and intercept stormwaters from entering the Kinney. create jobs through a large forest products industry, provide wildlife habitat, and make our homes, cities, and countryside more livable and beautiful. And whereas human activities, along with acts of nature, threaten our trees, creating the need for concerted action to ensure the future of our rural and urban forest. And whereas each year on the last Friday in April, people across the country pay special attention to the wonderful treasure our trees represent and dedicate themselves to the continued health of our forest. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Dan Tolan, Mayor of the City of River Falls, do hereby proclaim April 27th, 2018 to be Arbor Day in the City of River Falls, Wisconsin. Be it further resolved that I urge all citizens to become more aware of the importance of trees to their well-being and to participate in tree planting programs that will ensure a healthy and green city and inheritance for future generations in River Falls. Given under my hand and seal of the City of River Falls is 24th day of April 2018. And then the other proclamation is for Municipal Clerks Week. Municipal Clerks Week. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world as the oldest profession among public servants and provides the professional connections between the citizens, the governing bodies, and agencies at the local, county, and state levels. And whereas the duties of the municipal clerks are many, including serving as the official record keeper for the municipality, issuing licenses and permits, facilitating the annual board of review and municipal redistricting project, attending meetings, and serving as a resource. And whereas the 1,854 municipal clerks and 72 county clerks contribute to election administration by attending required training and dedicating themselves to providing fair, non-biased, nonpartisan, accurate, and responsible elections in Wisconsin. And whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the responsibilities of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, focus groups, and annual conferences across Wisconsin. Now therefore, I, Mayor Dan Tolan, do hereby recognize the week of May 6th through May 12th, 2018 as Municipal Clerks Week and further extend appreciation to our staff for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Given under my hand and seal of the City of River Falls is 24th day of April, 2018. Okay, next I just got a couple appointments I'd like to make, if the council will look favorably upon them. First is for the Board of Appeals, I'd like to reappoint Andrew Brown through February of 2021. I'd like to make a new appointment of Kellen Wells Mangold through April of 2021. And on the Library Board, I'd like to reappoint Robert Wing through July of 2021. On the Housing Authority, I'd like to make a new appointment of Jacqueline Nickum through December of 2022. And on the Utility Advisory Board, I'd like to make a new appointment of Kellen Wells Mangold through May of 2021.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of your appointments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next, we'll move into closed session per Wisconsin state statutes for the following purposes. 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session, to wit, sale of property in Whitetail Corporate Park and Sterling Ponds Corporate Park.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, move into closed session.
Second.
Christie, can we have a roll call, please? Oh, okay.
Odine.
Yes.
Watson.
Yes.
Gagne.
Yes.
Morse.
Yes.
Downing.
Yes.
Bierstead.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
We are in closed session.
mark me absent from closed session
No,
Yeah.
they always-
at 7:30.